Thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring today's video. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Rebecca, otherwise known as Hip Knit Hooray Online, and this is podcast episode 26. So in this podcast episode, I have a number of finished objects to share, a lot of little finished objects, which I'll get into. I'm wearing my latest cast off, which is my no frills sweater, another finished object. I'll be sharing some updates on long-term whips and my jelly top test knit, and I have a few new winter accessory cast-ons that I'll get into at the end. So we can get started with this finished object, my no frills sweater. I'm so happy to have finished this sweater. It's just a very basic stockinette sweater, but it actually took me a number of months just because I wasn't really prioritizing it. But I think that's kind of the theme with this sweater. The no frills sweater is a design that I've always wanted to knit ever since I first started knitting, but because it's such a basic silhouette, it always just went down in my knit to-do lists, and I knit other more exciting, more interesting projects. But with this navy color, I knew that it would look so good in a very basic stockinette sweater, so that's how I finally decided to cast on the no frills sweater. The yarn that I use is Isire Tivini, which was gifted to me for a previous test knit that I did for Elin Knitwear. I knit the Aspen sweater, which is also a raglan sweater, but it's a very chunky weight sweater. I think I knit it on 7 or 8 millimeter needles, if I'm not mistaken. And I have come to realize that I don't really like chunky weight sweaters, so I ended up frogging that and then reclaiming the yarn to use for this much more thinner gauge no frills sweater. So I used that, and I held it with Knitting for Olive soft silk mohair in the shade Navy. This sweater has a very simple construction. I'm sure you know already, this is a really popular pattern, but it's a top-down raglan with 1x1 rib cuffs and hems. I ended up sizing down to a 3.5 millimeter needle to knit the sweater instead of the suggested 4 millimeter needle. So I didn't exactly meet gauge, but it's because the Isire Tivini is a very thin fingering weight yarn. So I just wanted a more dense finished fabric with that yarn combination. So I sized down to 3.5 and I knit the size small, but this sweater probably fits more in between a size extra small and a small, I would say, in the pattern. I didn't make many other modifications to this sweater. I shortened the body by about 4 centimeters, and I did change the decrease rate for the sleeves. So I did work the decrease rate as written in the pattern, but the cuff ended up being really tight to my wrist, and because this yarn is, I would say, more rustic, I just thought that it wouldn't be that comfortable, so I ended up frogging back and changing the decrease rate to every 9 rows. And the sleeves, I think, have the perfect fit for me, where they're fitted enough, but they're still relaxed, especially at the cuff. I do find that the length of the sleeves is a little bit longer than what I would have liked for this sweater, a super minor detail. I think I followed the length in the pattern, but I think for this sweater, I would have preferred if the sleeve was bracelet length. Right now, it ends probably at the top of my palm when I wear it, but I'm not gonna go back and change that. I'm just gonna live with this length. I still really like the length, but I think it would have been a bit more comfortable, and I would have liked the silhouette a bit better if the sleeves were a bit shorter. That's a minor thing though. There weren't any other issues that I had with the pattern. Petite knit patterns I find are always super easy to follow, and as a very simple construction, I would be very surprised if there's any issues with the pattern, so no complaints or issues there. I do have some thoughts to share about the Isire Tivini yarn. So this was the first time that I had worked with Isire yarn before, and I was really excited, but I think the Tivini is just a tad too rustic for my liking. I kind of need to wear a high collar shirt underneath. I wouldn't say I need to wear a turtleneck, but something a little bit higher like this, because I do find that it is a little bit irritating, especially right here where my t-shirt underneath doesn't overlap with the sweater on top. I do find that it's maybe a little too rustic for me. I thought that holding it with the Knitting for Olive mohair would help a little bit, and it probably does, but it's still not my favorite, I would say. There's definitely other fingering weight yarns that I prefer over this one, so I probably wouldn't work with it again. It is quite expensive. It's around $20 for 50 grams, and the Tavini is on, as I mentioned, the lighter side of a fingering weight yarn, I would say. For every 100 grams, I think it's 510 meters, I believe. So it is a pretty thin yarn, which creates a really nice thin fabric, but it is, yeah, a little too rustic for my liking. So just because of the feel and the cost, I probably wouldn't use it again. But if you do like rustic yarns, I think that this is a decent option to go with, and you can always match it really well with the Isire silk mohair, which is an excellent silk mohair. So there's probably a time and place for it, but I wouldn't be going out to get it again anytime soon. And that's all that I have to say about the no frills sweater. I'll keep it on for the rest of the video. And I wanted to chat now about Squarespace before getting into the next finished object, because they are the sponsor of today's video.
Squarespace offers everything you need to build a website for your small business, whether you're a knitter, crocheter, sewist, or other maker selling your creative products. You can start by browsing their extensive library of professionally designed website templates, which you can browse by both business niche and website type. Once you have a website template picked out, Squarespace walks you through how to set up the website with a step-by-step guide that tracks your progress and video tutorials. Personally, I found this process was super thorough, so you know that everything is set up really well when you're ready to publish your site. Every Squarespace website also has built-in SEO tools for every web page, such as automatic sitemaps, clean URLs, and an AI SEO auditing check to ensure that your website is optimized to show up more often in search engines. You can test out all these features with a free trial on Squarespace, and no credit card information is required for it. And when you're ready to launch, you can head to squarespace.com/hipknithooray using the link down below, and you can save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain by entering the code hipknithooray. Thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring this video, and let's get back to the next FO.
The next finished object that I have to share is another sweater, not for me, but for a dog. This is the striped pup sweater by Stephen West of West Knits. So I told my friend Adam that I would knit a sweater for his dog Doris when she was still a puppy, and then they moved across the country to Vancouver, and so I hadn't knit the sweater yet because, yeah, she was still growing. But now that she's fully grown, I asked him to send me a bunch of measurements of hers to be able to knit a sweater, and then I started browsing of different patterns that I could use to knit her a sweater. The reason why I was a little bit nervous with this sweater is because Doris is a whippet, and I do find that whippets have a very interesting body proportion compared to most dogs. So I was looking online trying to find a pattern to go with. I came across the Edinburgh, I think it's the seamless raglan dog sweater, which is a free pattern, and I wanted to follow that one. But then when I came across this pattern, I saw in the projects that there was someone that knit this sweater for a whippet that had very similar proportions to Doris. So I was like, I think I just need to go with that one because she's not going to be here to try it on. So that's why I ended up going with this pattern here, but I'm really happy that I went with it because this was also the first time that I was following a Stephen West pattern, and I really enjoyed how the pattern was laid out. It's really clearly written, and I would say the amount of detail in the pattern is just perfect. I think it's an excellently written pattern. In terms of how the sweater is constructed, it's top down, and then there's increases for the body along either side of this rectangular panel, kind of like a very big saddle shoulder. And then you split for the legs of the sweater, or the arms or legs of the sweater. And then you work in the round, and then there's some short rows at the bottom to lengthen the top of the sweater over the dog's back. You can really tell that this sweater design is designed by somebody that has dogs, because there's lots of ways to customize this sweater to get it to fit your dog, and other optional modifications like adding a harness hole to the top of the sweater here for your dog's harness and leash. So for this pattern, I knit between a size 5 and 6. I cast it on, I think, the size 5, and then I did increases in this pattern until I got to the size 6. And then for separating for the sleeves or legs. I don't know what to call these for this sweater because it's for a dog. I just added a little bit more to the chest here for the sleeve separation than what was in the pattern to kind of account for Doris's proportions. And then I did shorten the sweater by a little bit just because since she's not here to try it on, I didn't want there to be like any issues for when she goes to the bathroom or anything like that. So I did shorten the length of the sweater, and it's still with me, so I need to ship it to them, but I'm really hoping that this is going to fit her. The yarn that I used was Originally Lovely Korea in the shade Chestnut, which is this burgundy red here, and then that was gifted to me, actually I should say, by Originally Lovely. And then I used Cascade 220 Superwash. I can't find the shade name. I threw away the ball band and I was looking at all the shades of Cascade 220 and I couldn't really find one that looks similar to this, so I can't tell you the shade name. I apologize for that, but that is this light blue here. So I have some mixed feelings about this yarn. I wanted to pick something that was really soft, so that's why I went with an alpaca and a superwash merino. The Originally Lovely is a very soft alpaca, but it did bleed a lot when I was blocking, to the point where I don't know if you'll be able to tell on camera, but it did bleed onto the blue in the stripes here. So I am a little bit disappointed with that. I don't think it's totally noticeable, but I definitely could tell as I was weaving in all the ends, and I can still see it here now. So the color of the Originally Lovely did bleed a little bit. I didn't use any color catcher tools or anything like that. I didn't really think to do that. So maybe if I used those, that would have helped a little bit more. But yeah, that yarn did bleed a little bit. But apart from that, I did really like both of the yarns. They're both very, very soft and they have excellent drape. They're both very drapey, heavier yarns, I would say. So I would use both of them again, but I'll just pay attention to the color bleeding of the Originally Lovely Korea if I'm using any other colors with that yarn. So I think that's all I have to say about this sweater. Would highly recommend this pattern if you want to knit a dog sweater. And I really hope that it's going to fit Doris. So I finished that, and I've also been busy knitting away at some ornaments. It's almost time for the holiday season, so I've been busy knitting away at on these ornaments for local markets that I'll be a vendor at this year. So I'll just share them really quickly in case you find this fun or if you want some color inspiration. So I'll start with these sweaters. This pattern is the Mini Crop Puff by the Wandering Flock. So I love making these sweaters. They're a little bit time consuming, but they're just so cute. So I think I'm gonna knit a few different color combinations, and whatever's left over from the markets I'll maybe string into a garland. So I have a yellow and red one here, very Winnie the Pooh coated, I would say. I have a number of these purple ones because I have a lot of this Cascade Heritage purple yarn, and it's just never ending. I knit so many of these sweaters in this color combination at this point, but this is the purple and chartreuse, which I really like, and I also knit a purple and pink one. So I have a bunch of those, and then these are my two probably personal favorite color combinations. This blue and red. I would love to knit a festival sweater in this color combination one day, and then just a very classic brown and white stripe. So the Wandering Flock pattern doesn't have the stripes in, but I'll leave in my project notes like how I do that. I think I do it every 5th round in this sweater. So I made those. I have made more of these donuts because these were really popular last year and they're just really fun to knit up. So this is the Tiny Little Donut pattern by Julie Williams, but I do modify this pattern so it is bigger. I knit this on 4mm needles, and I also work a number of increases and decreases to get it to be an even bigger shape. And it's 2 colors, so mimicking like a frosted donut, and then I sew on all the beads on top with they're just like a tube bead with a beading needle. You have to use a specific needle as well for this so the needle can fit through the tube beads. So I made 3 different colors this year. I made a few in each color, and I'm really happy to see them all together like this. So I made those. And the last set of ornaments that I have been knitting on are these Pop-Tarts, which is, I would say, I guess like a pattern by me. I have instructions for how to do this on my Ravelry project page, but I'm hoping to turn this into a more professional looking PDF as a free download. So that's in the works, but this is essentially just a stockinette tube that you're knitting, and then you Kitchener stitch the top closed, and then you cut out this felt shape, you sew on the 2 beads, you sew that onto the Pop-Tart, and then you Kitchener stitch the bottom closed, and then you get this really cute Pop-Tart shape. So I've made a bunch of these because they were very popular last year and I just didn't make enough of them, so that kind of surprised me. So I have made a few this year that I'm hoping I'll be prepared for the market. So yeah, I've been working away on those and they just bring me so much joy. I absolutely love making all of them. And I have a free pattern roundup for ornaments that I filmed, I want to say last year, maybe it was 2 years ago now, but I will link that somewhere here to check it out because I've included all of these patterns there. So those were all the finished objects that I have to share. It's a little bit misleading, but around this time of the year, I definitely have the most finished objects because of all of those ornaments. So we can get into whips now. I think I'll start with my jelly top test knit. So this is where I'm at. This is where I'm at with the top so far. This is a pattern by Mei Knits that is going to be released, I believe, later on this month. So I have finished working the body and now I am working the collar here and I'm about to cast off. This collar is going to be cast off in tubular stitch in 1 strand of mohair, so not really looking forward to that, but I think kind of necessary so the collar is a little bit more stretchy. But yeah, the jelly top is a top down, I would say like set in shoulder top. There's 3 different versions in the pattern. There's a tank top, short sleeve, and then a long sleeve. I'm knitting the long sleeve version, so I still need to finish adding the sleeves and there's not too much time left in this test knit, so I really need to get a move on this. And the top has this all over ruching texture and it's knit with 1 strand of mohair. So I was knitting the size 2 actually, and I get into this in my vlog, so I don't really want to talk about it too much in the podcast, but essentially I knit the size 2. It wasn't fitting how I liked, so I frogged it, and now I'm knitting the size 3, so I went up 1 size. So yeah, I had a little bit of a setback, but we're back, and that's probably why I'm a little bit behind on this project. So I have the sleeves to add. There's going to be short rows and a sleeve cap for that. And then I'll block this, and I'm excited to see how, and even if the mohair is going to really stretch out that much with blocking. I don't think that it will. So yeah, we'll see how this is going to fit, but I am really enjoying knitting up this top. I think the ruching is just super fun. You're knitting on 2 different needle sizes. So this is a 2.5 millimeter needle here for the collar, but also for the part of the ruching, and then you size up to a 4.5 millimeter needle. So it's also really fun playing with the different needle sizes and seeing all of this texture. So that's where I'm at with this top here. My next whip that I'll chat about is my Tombo tee, which I don't think I have too much progress on, but I did start on something with this sweater. So the Tombo tee is a pattern by Florence Miller of Handmade by Florence, and it is a top-down saddle shoulder t-shirt, but I'm modifying it so it's a long-sleeved sweater. The yarn that I'm using is Knit Picks Stroll and Knitting for Olive Merino. This is in the shade Cork, and this is in the shade Licorice. And then since my last podcast episode, I can't remember if I had the body cast off, but I've cast off the body if I haven't shared that already, and then now I'm working on the sleeves. I am incorporating decreases into the sleeve here. I will try this on in a little bit. I just want to work a few more rows so it reaches, I guess, kind of my elbow, so I can see a little bit better how it's going to fit. I am incorporating decreases every 16 rounds, but I might rip that back and not work decreases. I just want to see how this tee is going to fit, because I do want the sleeves of this sweater to be a little bit more relaxed, but I don't want them to be too loose as well. I'm kind of trying to balance the superwash merino in this knit pick stroll because I know it's going to grow a lot with blocking, so I'm trying to account for that as I'm knitting this, where I want the sleeve to be relaxed, but I don't want it to be stretched out too much after blocking. That was a little bit of a ramble, but yeah, I'm just guessing a little bit with the sleeve decreases here because it's a little bit different than what's in the pattern. So that's where I'm at with the Tombo tee, just slowly working away. It's a fingering weight garment on 3mm needles, so the sleeves are they're gonna take a little bit of time, but I'm very excited to have this finished object in my wardrobe once I am finally able to finish it. So that's the update on my Tombo tee. I also have my tulip loop sweater, but I haven't touched that since my last podcast episode, so there's really not that much to share on that one, so I won't talk about that one, but that's still a whip. I haven't frogged it. So those were all of my longer term already in progress whips, and we can get into my newest cast-ons. So the first one that I'll share right now is my slightly older cast-on, which is I don't know if I'd consider it like a freehand 3x1 sock, but I'm not really following a pattern, but I am following like standard stitch counts for a basic sock. So I cast on 60 stitches with I think it's the Laura Nelson tubular cast on Stitch Saver, which I forgot to mention. Going back to my no frill sweater, I did that for this cast on here, and I am totally obsessed with that cast on. I think it's such a neat finish. It looks exactly like a tubular cast on, but it's way easier, so I'll link that tutorial down below. So I cast on using that cast on technique. I knit 12 rows for the 1x1 rib cuff, and then now I'm working a 3x1 rib. Because a few of my knitting friends have recently knit 3x1 rib socks, and I am totally obsessed and very jealous of their socks. So I decided to do one myself. I'm freehanding until I get to the heel, and then I'll figure out what pattern to go with. I have a few options, like the I'm So Basic sock by Summer Lee Knits. I might just follow the heel for that, or I'll go with the shadow wrap heel of I think it's the Sock Exploration shadow wrap heel by Denise DeSantis. I've done that heel before, so I have some options for the heel, but yeah, just knitting the body of the foot, or knitting the leg of the foot in 3x1 rib. And I am using magic loop, and I would say that I'm a pretty big magic loop hater, pretty publicly on this channel, but I'm actually quite enjoying the knitting process with the magic loop on this sock. I don't know if I'm totally converted to magic loop, but I am enjoying it a little bit more. I think because the ChiaoGoo needles are a little bit sharper, so it just seems to flow a lot better with the 3x1 rib, and the laddering that I tend to get with magic loop is just not as obvious in the 3x1 rib. So yeah, I am enjoying the magic loop because I don't have to worry about losing a needle. So yeah, I'm just working away on this sock. This is kind of my transit knit that I take with me when I want something small and portable. And the yarn that I'm using is Knit Picks Hawthorne, which is a 2-ply, I think it's a Peruvian Highland wool and nylon blend. So it's a little bit more rustic and rougher than their Knit Picks Stroll or Muse, I think is the other sock yarn. So yeah, I'm enjoying it. It is a little bit more of a rougher yarn, but I do like all the little speckles in it. So that is one of my latest cast-ons. We'll see how I feel if I actually finish this sock, because I am not a sock knitter, but I just really wanted a 3x1 rib sock. They fit so nicely, so I'm gonna see if that makes any difference in my sock knitting mojo. And then I just have one little baby cast on that I started this morning. So I really want to knit some sort of headband that's going to cover my ears for this winter. I mentioned this pattern and this thought in my gift knitting guide, which I'll also link if you haven't seen it before. I think I'll be posting that one first over this podcast. But essentially, now that I have bangs, I don't know if I can wear the hats that I usually wear, because with my bangs, I kind of want them to have a little bit of volume, and then if you put a hat on, I'll just get really bad hat hair. So I thought I should probably knit some headbands that can go over the ears so they'll keep my ears warm for this winter. This is also the first day that it is snowing here in Toronto, our first snowfall. It's snowing very intensely in front of me here right now, so the clock is definitely ticking. It was a very obvious reminder this morning that I need to knit this headband. So the headband pattern that I picked is the Elin Headband by We Made Wardrobe, and I've cast on using Noro Silk Garden Sock Solo because the pattern has these beautiful samples knit with Shoppo wool in a color changing yarn, and it just looks so stunning. So I thought I'll try to use my Noro Silk Garden Sock Solo because it's a similar gauge. It is slightly different though because the Silk Garden Sock Solo is a 1-ply, I guess, roving yarn. So there's parts that are really thick and then parts that are really thin. And when I held a mohair with this yarn, it was just a little too thick for the headband. So I'm just holding it on its own, but you can really see the different textures, and I don't really know how I feel about that. I just started this headband. It's a headband that you can tie at the bottom. So I think it's going to be great to be able to adjust, and I don't have to worry too much about sizing. So this is just one of the ties that you start, and it's from one tie to the other tie. There's some increases, and then stockinette for the main part of the headband that's going to cover your ears and as well go along the top of your head. So yeah, I started the double knitting, and I don't really know how I feel about how it looks. I do really like the Silk Garden Sock Solo, but yeah, I don't know. It looks a little bit messy to me. So I might keep going with this, or I might try a fingering and mohair version. So two options that I am thinking about is this yarn here that I got from Good Grief Dye Studio, which is dyed locally here by Mariah, who is the owner of Good Grief Yarn and Provisions. So I really like her hand-dyed yarn. I think this speckling's really fun. And I have leftovers of this Drops Kid Silk here from, I have it here actually. This is very similar to the yarn. I knit the honey drawstring, honey pouch, I think, by Petite Knit a few years ago now, and I used this mohair here. So I'm thinking maybe the headband could work in this color combination. I really like a hot pink or fuchsia on me, so I'm thinking maybe this instead of the Silk Garden Sock Solo. Or I'll go with a yarn that I recently got, which is the Dream in Color Smooshy Yak in Blanche Fur that also has some of the pink speckled into it, just less intensely than Pop Culture here. And then I'll hold it with just a cream off-white soft silk mohair. So I think I might go with these color combinations instead of the Silk Garden Sock Solo, or I'll knit a bit of the double knitting, but that's my next cast on. Or maybe I'll have all three headbands. I don't really know. I don't have a knit headband, but we definitely have a lot of snow and a very long winter here in Toronto, so I could have more than one headband, I think. So that's my newest cast on, and one that I'm really excited about. I think it's a really clever pattern, so I'm excited to follow it. And so far, I'm really enjoying the We Made Wardrobe patterns. So that is my newest cast on, and that's all that I had to share in this podcast episode. I don't have any acquisitions to share. Thankfully, we're just working away from stash. And in terms of my plans, I don't really know what I want to do next, just working away at the ornaments, some cold weather accessories like this headband. For garments though, I might slow down a little bit because I might want to try to finish all my whips in time for the new year. TBD on that. So I kind of start the new year with a fresh slate. So we'll see. But yeah, I don't really have too many plans as of right now. I had my fall knitting plans, but I kind of like the idea of ending the year whipless, so might try to finish on my Tombo tee and my tulip loop sweater and then go from there. So that's all that I had to share in this podcast episode. I hope I was able to keep you company while you were knitting. And And until my next video, I will say goodbye and happy knitting.